Welcome to Timeless Affairs. I was taken aback to discover that my husband would consider offering me to his nephew for amusement. It was a warm summer evening when the dynamics of our relationship began to shift. The sun was setting, casting a gentle golden light over our home. This illumination filtered through the sheer curtains, creating playful shadows on the walls. I found myself seated on the sofa, lost in thought, staring vacantly at the empty space before me. My mind wandered through the quiet realms of longing and desire that had eluded me for some time. A year had passed since I married Daniel, a kind and affectionate man who always made me feel valued. Our relationship was characterized by mutual respect and love, yet gradually something began to change. The excitement and passion that once ignited our connection had become muted and subdued. Although our love remained profound, the spark that had once illuminated every touch and glance had faded. That evening, Daniel returned home late from work, appearing somewhat weary and distant. He kissed me softly on the lips, and I sensed that he was preoccupied with something. I refrained from pressing him to share his thoughts, trusting that he would confide in me when he felt ready. Instead, I focused on preparing dinner, attempting to dismiss the unusual tension that lingered as we sat down to eat. Our conversation was light but brief, as Daniel seemed lost in his own thoughts. Eventually, after dinner, he broke the silence with an unexpected suggestion. "My nephew Luke is staying with us for the weekend," he announced, his tone casual, yet hinting at something deeper. "I believe you will enjoy his company. He is quite different and a lot of fun." I raised an eyebrow, slightly confused by the way he emphasized fun. Luke was younger than Daniel by several years, and though I had met him a few times, I hadn't spent much time alone with him from what I knew. He was charming, handsome in a boyish way, and had a reputation for being a bit of a flirt. I wasn't sure what Daniel was suggesting or where this was going, but the curiosity began to stir in me later that evening. When Luke arrived, the energy in the room shifted instantly. His presence was magnetic, his confidence palpable. He greeted me with a warm hug, his hands lingering on my waist just a little longer than expected, his eyes dark and intense, locked with mine. And in that moment, I felt a surge of excitement that I hadn't felt in a long time. The night wore on, and the three of us sat in the living room, chatting and laughing over wine. Daniel was relaxed, more so than I had seen him in days, as the conversation flowed. I noticed the subtle way Luke's attention kept drifting towards me, his playful smiles, his occasional glances, the way he leaned in when I spoke. It was as if a current was building between us, slow and steady, impossible to ignore. When Daniel excused himself to take a call, the atmosphere between Luke and me shifted again. His eyes were locked on mine, and the space between us seemed to shrink, even though we hadn't moved. "You look stunning tonight," Luke said softly, his voice low and velvety. I brushed, unsure how to respond, but the way he was looking at me made my heart race. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice betraying the nerves fluttering in my chest. He leaned in closer, his face only inches from mine. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to feel something new, something exciting?" My breath hitched. I couldn't deny that there was a part of me that craved the thrill of the unknown, the excitement of something forbidden. But Daniel was just in the other room. Surely this couldn't happen. But the way Luke was looking at me, the way his words seemed to weave a spell around me, made it hard to think clearly. Before I could answer, Daniel re-entered the room. He glanced between us, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "I see you two are getting along," he remarked. Sitting back down, there was something in his tone, something teasing, almost as if he was amused by the growing tension between us. For a moment I was worried he might have sensed what was happening, but instead Daniel simply poured himself another glass of wine and leaned back into the couch, completely relaxed. He looked over at me, his eyes warm, but then he said something I never expected. He began swirling the wine in his glass. "Luke has always been a good man, loyal, fun, and very capable of making someone feel special." My heart skipped a beat. Was he suggesting what I thought he was, Luke? "Why don't you help her relax tonight?" Daniel's words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Luke's eyes darkened with understanding, and I felt my breath catch again. I looked over at Daniel, searching his face for any sign of jealousy or anger, but there was none, only that same knowing smile, his gaze soft yet filled with something deeper, permission. Perhaps Luke didn't hesitate. He moved closer, his fingers brushing against mine, sending a thrill up my arm. I glanced at Daniel again, but he gave me a small nod as if to tell me it was okay. Slowly, Luke's hand found my cheek, his touch gentle but firm, and before I knew it, his lips were on mine. The kiss was slow, exploratory, full of the kind of passion I had missed for so long. His hands roamed softly over my body, teasing, pulling me into him. As his lips worked their magic, it felt like the world outside had disappeared, leaving only the three of us in this strange, intoxicating moment. When we finally pulled away, I looked back at Daniel again. His eyes were on me, filled with approval and something else, satisfaction. He wasn't upset, wasn't angry. Instead, he seemed to enjoy watching me being cared for as if this was something he had wanted all along. Luke's hands continued to explore his touch, growing more insistent, more confident. His fingers traced the curve of my waist, pulling me closer to him. Every touch sent a wave of heat coursing through my body, and I found myself leaning into him, wanting more. We spent the rest of the night like that, wrapped in a web of desire and exploration, with Daniel watching, guiding and approving every move. Luca's hands were scalia, his kisses deep and hungry, and I found myself lost in the sensation of it. All time seemed to slow, and the boundaries I had once thought so firm began to blur. As the night wore on, I realized that something had shifted in me as well. I wasn't just enjoying the attention, I was thriving in it. The way Luke made me feel desired, adored, wanted, awakened a part of me that I had long buried, and Daniel, he seemed to relish in my pleasure, encouraging it, wanting more from me. The hours melted away as Luke and I continued to explore each other, with Daniel's steady presence in the background, always there, always watching. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced, this slow burn passion that built and built, never quite reaching its peak, but always simmering just beneath the surface. Every touch, every glance, every kiss was a promise of more, yet we never rushed, never hurried. We let the night take us where it would, savoring every moment, every sensation, and when the sun finally began to rise, casting soft, pale light through the windows, I found myself wrapped in Luke's arms. Daniel beside us, his hand gently stroking my back. I had never felt so content, so complete. This was more than just a night of passion. It was an awakening, a discovery of something new, something thrilling, something I never knew I needed. As I lay there, caught between the warmth of Luke's embrace and Daniel's steady gaze, I realized that the night had changed everything. Our relationship had deepened, our love had grown stronger, and the passion we had once lost had been rekindled in the most unexpected way. And I knew, as I drifted off to sleep, that this was only the beginning. As the dawn light spilled into the room, the intensity of the night lingered in the air, thick with passion and desire. Luke's hand traced slow circles on my skin, igniting a fire within me that hadn't been extinguished throughout the night. My body still hummed with the electricity of his touch, but it was Daniel's steady gaze that pulled me back into the moment, grounding me. His eyes bore into mine, full of pride and approval, as if witnessing the unraveling of every hidden desire I hadn't known I had. I realized then that something had shifted permanently between the three of us, a bond forged in passion, trust, and something deeper than I could understand in that moment. As Luke's hand tightened around me and Daniel leaned in close, their combined presence overwhelmed me, filling me with a sense of completeness I'd never known before, the anticipation, the hunger for more than just physical satisfaction stirring deep within. It was as if the night had opened up a door I could never close again, and I didn't want to. In that moment, I surrendered completely to them, to the passion, to the undeniable connection we now shared. Whatever came next, I was ready for it, consumed by the intensity that pulsed between us, knowing that our story had only just begun.